Hi guys, Stuart here, and this is Generation Pixel. I thought we'd kick things off with a short journey through my life in gaming, so if you're interested, stay tuned. Okay, firstly, you're going to need to find a phone booth, and then phone Rufus. Ask him to bring the DeLorean, keep a steady 88 miles per hour until you come to a police box, jump inside, find a room with the time tunnel, and whisk yourself back to 1978. Now I know you all think that 1978 takes us back to the time of the dinosaurs, but you have to remember that 1978 was the birth of the golden age of video arcades. And I was lucky, no, I was blessed enough to have my first gaming experience at the hands of the machine that started it all, Taito's Space Invaders. Now, Space Invaders might not seem much by today's standards, but for a game that's over 40 years old, I'd challenge anyone to deny it's still a highly playable game. And it was this playability, no, not playability, it was this replayability that helped solidify the future of video games. If I had to distill the game down to the essence of what made it what it was, I'd highlight two important facts. One, it had a high score mechanic, so kids like me were obsessed by getting on that table, and I dare say a few adults at the time as well. And two, its main game mechanic, the ever increasing speed of the sprites, which was a glitch, or at very least a happy accident in the programming. But it was, and it still is, a game much more important than its separate parts. And that's not to mention, without Space Invaders, we would have been left with Pong. Just think about that. 1982, you can almost smell the nostalgia, and it was the next big step in my video game journey. 1982 was another landmark year in my video gaming journey. It was also, however, quite an important era, or the start of an important era for the video game industry as a whole. And that was down to two factors. One, in Europe and the UK, you saw the birth, or at least the expansion, of the home computer. And two, across the Atlantic in the United States, they were creeping ever so closely to the fabled video game crash of 1983. Fortunately for me, the latter had no impact whatsoever. I had begged for an Atari 2600 for almost a year, but on Christmas Day 1982, I woke up and opened, to my surprise and eventual delight, a ZX Spectrum 16K rubber keys. And my very first game was a little Pac-Man clone by the name of Hungry Horace. A simple Pac-Man clone where you played as the titular Horace as he chomped his way through 4 repeating mazes, being chased by park guards and trying to avoid them in your attempt to get a high score. And that was pretty much the game. Just the typical fun and addictive gameplay that dominated the early era of video games. But what was most important, of course, it was mine, and I could play it when I wanted. Moving on to my next step in my video game journey, you have to travel to 1991. And that was all down to a little console by the name of the Sega Megadrive. Now, during my time with the ZX Spectrum, I was aware there were other consoles in the market. Of course, you had the NES and you had the Sega Master System. But it wasn't until 1991 when I sat down with a Sega Megadrive and watched Sonic the Hedgehog for the first time that I knew I was going to change from my home PCs, well, my home computers at the time, to this new, faster, graphically improved console. Sonic the Hedgehog was something else. I had never seen anything with the speed or graphical capabilities of the game or machine. And of course, that's not to mention the music. And without a doubt, the Sega Megadrive, or Genesis in the States, and Sonic the Hedgehog deserved a place in history, and I was glad that was my next step. Now for my next step, you only have to move on 3 years. By the time I turned 21, I started getting interested in home computers again, but IBM compatible home computers, and I bought and built my own PC. Now, the specs, if I remember rightly, I had a 486 processor, 4MB of RAM, 250 gigabyte I wish, 250MB hard drive. Clock speed was 33 MHz, I believe, and I think that might even have been overclocked. But the games that were coming through for IBM compatibles were fantastic. Games like King's Quest, Priest Quest, basically all the quests. If Sierra released a game, I wanted to play it. And of course you had your LucasArts. So basically, when I think back, point and clicks were one of my biggest draws at that time. Of course, I also loved strategy and real-time strategy games, Command and Conquer and the like. And to be fair, it was also the stage where I started gaming seriously again. During my time previously with the Sega Megadrive, it was now and again I dipped into games. Whereas once I had built my PC and had a collection of games that I was enjoying playing, I was getting up early in the morning to play them, I was playing them later at night. Again, for my next step, it didn't take too long. It was 1996 and I was first introduced to the Sony PlayStation. A good friend of mine had just recently bought the PlayStation and of course I was curious, so went to see it. The first game we played on it was one of the FIFA games, one of the football games, and as graphically improved it was to previous generations, I would have left it there. However, he did have a little game by the name of Resident Evil. And I don't think I'm exaggerating much when I say I was captured from the very beginning of that game, and I was ensnared by everything the game had to offer. From the cheesy dialogue, to the 3D graphics, and most importantly, to that very first jump scare when the dog jumps through the window in the hallway. And I knew I had no option but to go out that next day and purchase myself a PlayStation, a decision I have never regretted. Now, my next step in my video game history was the easiest one ever. It was 2000, the PlayStation 2 was coming out and I knew I was getting it. I loved everything that the PlayStation had to offer, and with the PlayStation 2 you were getting the same catalogue but the newer, improved games that were due to come out. And I'll be honest, the launch games didn't excite me terribly, but being backwards compatible, I still had my catalogue of PlayStation games. But one of the games that came out close, or in the launch window at least, was Kessen, a game that I cherish even today, a wonderful strategy game set in feudal Japan. And I think it harkened back to my PC gaming, but with of course the ease of console gaming. My next step, as no doubt you've guessed, I moved straight onto the PlayStation 3. Not quite at launch, but pretty close to it. Yes, at the time there was a lot of controversy about the PlayStation 3. Of course, mainly the price, and of course it had released 1 year after the Xbox 360. But being slightly older, I think I appreciated the price and understood what Sony were trying to do. The original PlayStation 3s were backwards compatible to both PlayStation 2 and original PlayStation, which was probably the first thing that endeared me to Sony at the time. But of course that's all history of PlayStation, and that's for another video. For me, there was another reason as well, and probably for the first time ever in all my history, there was a launch title or a near launch title that I was desperate to get my hands on, and that was none other than Assassin's Creed. Again, Assassin's Creed is well documented. My love for it came purely from the graphical content. I remember watching that first trailer and being gobsmacked, awe-inspired. And of course, with hindsight, we all know that the gameplay is a little bit repetitive and there's not a great amount of gameplay within it. But I think I knew even at the time that this was a blueprint for something that was going to be much bigger. And I think I've been rightly justified, since we're now looking at the 9th Assassin's Creed game in the franchise about to release. Okay, so moving on, next step. Take a guess. Correct, PlayStation 4. Unlike with the last two PlayStations, however, I didn't buy it at launch. And if you've been paying attention to what I've been saying, you'll probably know why. Not because it was Sony, not because I was jumping to another console or system, it was because this was the first one that wasn't backwards compatible. Not to 3, not to 2, not to the original PlayStation. Now I'll be completely honest and tell you that didn't upset me too much. It just meant that I was willing to hang on a bit before I invested in a PlayStation 4. As wonderful as my back catalogue is or has been, you also have to be aware that we need to move forward. And to produce a PlayStation 4 that was fully backwards compatible, the price would be astronomical. Look what happened to the PlayStation 3, my point in case. Also with the PlayStation 4, the launch titles didn't excite me that much. I knew there would be games in the future, and I knew I would be buying a PlayStation 4 at one point, but at the time I had no real necessity for it. That all changed in 2015. I did cave, I did buy my PlayStation 4, and for one reason. And that reason was quite simple. The rumour mill, the hype train, call it what you want, for Final Fantasy VII Remake was hurtling along at light speed, and that was one game I was not going to miss out on. And was I glad when it was released? Well, yes, mostly. But that's a story for another time. All I can say is, if that was the only game I bought for my PlayStation 4, it would still have justified it for me. And had it been a launch title, I would have bought the PlayStation 4 much sooner. Well, my next step isn't even here yet. Well, it's almost here. Just round the corner. You've guessed it. The imminent release of the PlayStation 5. And I will be buying it at launch, if I can get one that is. And the reasons for that? 1, it's going to be backwards compatible to PlayStation 4 at least. And 2, yes, there's launch titles I'm interested in. And 3, as a bonus, there will even be upgrades to games I own on the PlayStation 4 to run better on the PlayStation 5. What else could we ask for? So my friends, this has been my journey through gaming, and if you've watched this from start to end, I applaud you. Full disclosure, I will be making more videos in the future, but not quite like this one. I will be doing editorials at some point, I will be doing reviews, lists, and you know, the usual. It will be mostly, or maybe 99.9% video game related. I might just sprinkle in a little geekery of other things later or sooner. So thank you for watching, and I hope I see you next time, or at least you see me, because I can't see you. Not yet. Bye.